Daddy Zeta, Daddy Zeta, Daddy Zeta! What is it, GT Goku? Oh my goodness, I have very bad news. Trip Sauce debunked me and my power scaling in the new video that he created. Wait, what? Word? I didn't even know about this. Well, you know, you're my go, GT Goku. I think I might know what I have to do. What? Well, Trip Sauce is a pretty good debater, even though he doesn't rep GT. He's pretty good at defending his arguments, so this is going to be quite the fun challenge for me, you know? I'm so freaking tough. Please, Zeta, please help me. Please help me. I'm the GO, bro. I'm the best. You're right, and I'm the best too. I'm the best at defending you, so you know what that means. We finna run it back.
Super Saiyan 4 and CC Goku becomes blue, they're also still relative, which supports the idea that Super Saiyan 4 and Super Saiyan Blue are equal in multiplier.
Or it's just not the same Super Saiyan 4 across GT and Heroes. For example, we know Daima has Super Saiyan 4, but obviously you're going to argue that GT Super Saiyan 4 is a higher multiplier than that of Daima, right? So it just doesn't have to be the same Super Saiyan 4. Like, the Super Saiyan 4 for Xeno Goku could just simply have a Super Saiyan Blue level multiplier, and that's just it. You'd really have to rat to say that it's the same multiplier for Super Saiyan 4 across GT and Heroes, because obviously GT and Heroes are two different continuities. Yes, Xeno Goku is not GT Goku, okay? He's not GT Goku.
Yo, Drip, I hate to break this to you, but no one's actually ratting here. My basis for why the Heroes multiplier is the GT multiplier is because Heroes is literally based off of the anime. So if it's based off of the anime, then the same concepts are going to apply as a parallel level of scaling, which I actually address further into the video. So I don't know why you're trying to grab all of my arguments individually, even though that these things are literally supporting one another, etc., etc., etc. They're just subsections of my argument, so I don't know why the fuck you're doing that. Oh, and by the way, my argument is just going to be more valid and have a higher probability using Occam's razor, because it would take less assumptions to say that they are the same exact multiplier than them being different. So I don't know why you were trying to pull up that whole different timeline BS to kind of prove your point more, because legit in different timelines, the same Saiyan transformation can have the same multiplier. Like the Future Trunks timeline still has Super Saiyan as 50 times. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be different in other timelines, but the thing is, right, in other timelines, they can be the same multiplier. So I don't know why you're trying to cook here, bro. That shit was not it, twin. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's gonna take less assumptions that Super Saiyan is 50 times in the Xeno timeline, right? Then rather than it just being a different multiplier entirely.
The same thing is also shown in FighterZ, where Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Super Saiyan Blue Vegito are literally relative with each other, and they have multiple dialogues trying to tease the fact that Super Saiyan Blue and Super Saiyan 4 are relative to each other.
Honestly, I think all of that was just made for game mechanics. Obviously, they're not going to have the exact power differences between characters as opposed to the anime, as if you had the exact power differences between characters, then Beerus would just instantly one-shot any character that isn't even Battle of Gods Goku level, right? Or you could have someone like Whis, for example, in Dragon Ball Xenoverse, completely one-shotting any version of Goku, but obviously that is not the case, right? So the thing is, it's just for game mechanics and just for the game to be fun. It's not meant to be taken literally. Like, obviously, they're going to make the characters relative to some degree and not instantly one-shot each other so that the game can be fun. So I don't think it was meant to be taken seriously, like in terms of power scaling.
But wait, nigga sauce, bago, you're ignoring my point, bro. Basically, right, you saying that it's just game mechanics, that's like true to some degree, but you're ignoring the point that I'm trying to make. Obviously, they're going to be relative because it's a freaking game and you have to enjoy the game, and it's going to be completely unfun if it goes through accurate power scaling. But the thing is, right, that doesn't mean video games cannot have structured power scaling. Let me explain. Legit, the fact that they even have dialogues making this kind of shit, right, is just proof that there's structured power scaling in the game to some level of degree. In fact, in the FighterZ lore, Android 21 is actually OP, right? So just because it's a game, does now mean that she's not OP? Like, bro, that was a literal plot point in the FighterZ story. Like, it's not just game mechanics. Like, sometimes FighterZ can actually have structured lore and power scaling. So I don't know why you're just trying to discard that because, oh, it's just a game. Oh, it's just game mechanics. I'm not saying that it can't mutually exist, but there is structured power scaling in FighterZ. And the dramatic finish shit is not just game mechanics. The dramatic finish stuff is literally like lore kind of stuff, or like actual like cutscenes, right? That kind of stuff can actually bring in structured power scaling in contrast to actual gameplay.
With Super Saiyan Blue, there is no contradiction in GT that prevents this from being the case.
Maybe because Super Saiyan Blue is, just not in GT.
This argument comes from an author statement confirming that Super Saiyan God surpasses everything, but fans of Dragon Ball Super keep taking this statement literally in the most extreme way possible and try to say that it surpasses literally everything prior within the Dragon Ball franchise, which would include GT. But this argument is so bad because everything could just be in context to everything prior to Super Saiyan God's appearance chronologically, or it could just be referring to everything present within the verse. And if you think that Super Saiyan 4 and the Shadow Dragons exist within Goku's verse, you're also conceding that GT is after Super, because that means that concepts in GT exist in Super, which would mean that these characters exist, which would contradict the statement as a loophole.
Saucy, you realize that this interpretation can actually go both ways, right? It's not limited to just one interpretation. Because yes, GT does take place in some future version of the Dragon Ball timeline, so chronologically it's supposed to come after Dragon Ball Super. However, the existence of GT was before Dragon Ball Super was even conceptualized, right? And these same staff, including Toriyama themselves, also had involvement with GT. So them making the statement that Super Saiyan God is beyond everything could also include GT, because GT was, existent before the concept of Battle of Gods or Dragon Ball Super or anything like that. So the statement could also apply to that. Like, it's not strictly limited to one interpretation, Saucy. Don't try to make this look like it can only be one thing and not the other, because that would just be a false dichotomy.
I never made that claim. What the fuck? I never claimed that it's impossible for that interpretation to be true. But the thing is, right, the term everything is still ambiguous, right? So obviously it's going to be their burden for them to prove that their interpretation is the case.
Super Saiyan God was described by Goku himself to be a power-up that he could never ever achieve by training on his own. Like, Goku literally says that now he knows that there's a power that he will never reach by training on his own, and it makes him mad, right? Spoiler alert, with the lore of Dragon Ball, you can reach Super Saiyan 4 by training. Like, you can reach Super Saiyan 4 by unlocking your Saiyan potential, like all that stuff. You can reach Super Saiyan 4 by training. You can even surpass Super Saiyan 4 by training. But Super Saiyan God was just seen as this unreachable level of power. Like, the realm of the gods in Dragon Ball is just like a completely transcendent level over anything that Dragon Ball has ever shown prior. Like, Beerus is just a completely different league. There's literally nobody else in Dragon Ball Z or GT comparable to the likes of Beerus or any of the gods in Super. Like, they are just on a completely different level, right?
You're forgetting the fact that when Battle of Gods came out, Super Saiyan God was only achievable through a ritual, so it wouldn't be achievable through training. But that in no way means that it's superior to Super Saiyan 4. What the fuck is this argument? And characters like the Universe 6 Saiyans actually do reach the level of Super Saiyan God with training methods far inferior to Goku's, because let's be honest, the Universe 6 Saiyans do not have the same training methods that Goku has, and they would definitely not be as good considering Goku's motivation and actual, like, drive for power, in contrast to these Saiyans, which they can still have that drive, but you know Goku, he just has that shit way, way more than these guys do. Again, the form as a concept can only be achieved through a ritual, but that does not mean that Goku cannot reach that level with training or other characters, because let's be honest, does Beerus have Super Saiyan God? Hell no. Does Jiren have Super Saiyan God? Hell no. But they eventually get to a level where they are far beyond Super Saiyan God.
Argument comes from another Toriyama interview where he explains that the scriptwriters were giving him drafts of the Battle of God story, explaining how Super Saiyan God and Beerus were so strong that there was like literally nothing higher than them. But the problem with this argument is that it literally gets contradicted by Battle of God itself, because Whis is stronger than Beerus and Goku. So this already contradicts the whole point of these drafts if the narrative itself is literally contradicting it. So this doesn't mean shit. And also, it could just be applied to only beings within the verse or the level of power within the Battle of Gods, aka Superverse, and not inherently applying to other continuity.
The statement says that the characters of Super Saiyan God and Beerus had to be introduced because the main cast had already been so strong that there was literally nothing above them. This statement about the main cast is literally in context to everything in Dragon Ball Z.
Drip, please reread the scan. You're just making another extreme interpretation. The scan would just mean that they're the strongest. That's it, bro. It just means that they're the strongest and that there's nothing higher than them within their verse until the gods show up.
Possibly including even End of Z, because Toriyama had already intended to retcon End of Z by introducing new concepts like Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods and Dragon Ball Super. He had already had it in mind to retcon End of Z as
Is on par with Super Saiyan 4. So this is just completely stupid.
Saucy. Whether or not Vegito is stronger or weaker than Super Saiyan 4 isn't the main point of the argument. The fact that it's even being brought up in the conversation shows that they're in the same order of magnitude. They have to be in the same order of magnitude in terms of like multipliers or in terms of strength in order for it to be brought up in a conversation. Like, they're not completely irrelevant to one another, right? For example, I can't say for sure if Vados is stronger than Whis, that type of stuff, right? It's implying that they're at least in the same order of magnitude to even be comparable to each other in any sense whatsoever, right? It doesn't make any sense for you to say that, I can't say for sure if Zeno is stronger than Namek Saga Super Saiyan 4 Goku, right? Because it doesn't make sense. That comparison doesn't make sense. It wouldn't even be brought into the conversation because obviously Zeno is way stronger than Namek Saga Super Saiyan Goku. So the fact that Super Saiyan 4 and Vegito are being put in the same conversation implies that they are at some level of relativity.
It's not going to be as reliable as the blatant feats shown in Heroes and the blatant statements and showings of them being connected in continuity. And like, I'm talking about Super being connected to GT. But anyway, right? They don't even know. Yeah, they don't even know the multipliers, bro. That's why they're saying perhaps. They don't really have the authority to make that statement. Well, maybe they do, but they're not definitive with it.
Super Saiyan God, it is described as a form that far surpasses Super Saiyan 3, and for Super Saiyan 4, it is described as the ultimate form that surpasses Super Saiyan 3. When comparing these two descriptions side by side, it should be pretty clear that Super Saiyan 4 is stronger, via being the ultimate form that surpasses Super Saiyan 3. Something being ultimate by definition means to be the greatest or highest.
Saucy. This argument is buns. Just because it says that it's the ultimate form that surpasses Super Saiyan 3 doesn't necessarily mean it's stronger than Super Saiyan God, simply because Super Saiyan God is described on the same page. The statement about it being the ultimate form in quote, yes, does mean that it is the greatest form at that point, but that is specifically in reference to GT, since your own scan literally says that it is the ultimate form that surpasses Super Saiyan 3, and right after that it says in Dragon Ball GT. So
the sentences are disconnected. Bro, what are you talking about? But anyway, that's not my debunk. My debunk to this whole thing, right, is the fact that you're trying to create some sort of exclusive separation with these kind of statements when that's just also going to come with more assumptions. Because if I gave a regular person this book and they knew Japanese and they read it and they didn't know anything about Dragon Ball, right, and they only knew the information of what was strictly given to them in the guidebook, they would actually say Super Saiyan 4 is stronger because of the descriptions if they were logical with it. And why, Zeta? Why, you may ask? Because it's called the ultimate form next to the other form. It's going to take less assumptions if it's in context to the actual guidebook and not strictly in continuity contexts. And I don't know why you're bringing up the context of GT, because the funny thing about that argument is that in the same video, I'm trying to prove to my audience that GT is canon to Battle of Gods, bro. And the funny thing, right, is that the context is not as ambiguous as the phrase everything with the other arguments that you've been putting out. And you've had these extreme interpretations twice in your video as I'm counting.
Also, Saucy, depending on the translation, the wording and the context can change. In this translation, which I believe is more valid than the one you used, says that Super Saiyan 4 is the ultimate form of the Super Saiyans, right? So it's talking in reference to Super Saiyan transformations, conventional Super Saiyan transformations. And then it says that it is the one that surpasses Super Saiyan 3. Obviously, because, you know, chronologically, 4 comes after 3. So it makes sense that it is the ultimate form of the Super Saiyans that surpasses Super Saiyan 3. Like, I don't think I have to explain this. So it being called the ultimate form doesn't mean anything, and doesn't mean it surpasses every Super Saiyan God transformation in Dragon Ball, because it's quite literally in reference to just the conventional Super Saiyan transformations.
Drip, I never made the claim that Super Saiyan 4 is beyond every single God transformation. I made the claim that it's better than Super Saiyan God. So I don't know why you're trying to add some extra shit to my statement or extra shit to my stance. I never did that shit. But anyway, right, your argument is actually so bad because the thing is, right, your translation basically is saying that Super Saiyan 4 is part of the conventional Super Saiyans because it's saying the ultimate form of the conventional Super Saiyans. But the problem with this argument is that Super Saiyan 4 is not part of the conventional Super Saiyans. It's completely disconnected from the Super Saiyan nature. It's a completely different form. It's a completely different branch of power. And the Perfect Files perfectly explains this. And I'm pretty sure everyone like knows about this. But like, I'm just assuming that you know. So, But anyway, that just pretty much debunks this whole translation and its validity because it already makes a claim that's just blatantly wrong right next to it.
The ultimate of the forms that surpass Super Saiyan 3. And the only two forms that surpass Super Saiyan 3 in the guide are Super Saiyan 4 and Super Saiyan God.
Saucy, it doesn't say it's the ultimate of the forms that surpass Super Saiyan 3. It says it's the ultimate form that surpasses Super Saiyan 3. It's not talking in a plural context. It's talking in a singular context, right?
Whether or not it's singular or plural is not going to matter, and I'm just going to give a perfect example. So let's just say that I have a noodle, right? A noodle in some spaghetti, right? And basically, right, B is the ultimate of the noodles, right? Or the ultimate noodle that is greater than this noodle, right? And the other one far surpasses this other noodle. Like, let's say A far surpasses this noodle, right? Yeah, like it's far longer. But B is the ultimate noodle in terms of size, right? So if it's the ultimate noodle, then it's going to be greater, even if they're not saying it in a plural context.
The really silly argument that the phrase ultimate form is just a reference to it being the ultimate form in GT. However, this is clearly not the case because if you actually read the text, it says that it's the ultimate form before they explain the Dragon Ball GT origin stuff. So they're literally making a general statement before they start explaining its origins in GT, which is a completely different separated sentence. So linguistically speaking, there's absolutely no way those two things can be connected in any way whatsoever.
Saucy, nothing that you've said justifies it being in reference to anything outside of GT in the first place. You're just presupposing that. Just because the descriptions for GT come after the statement doesn't in any way imply that it is a general statement that applies to anything outside of GT.
Before I continue with this debunk, this video is sponsored by discord.gg/Noblesse. Join Noblesse. Come die Noblesse. If you want to discuss Dragon Ball topics or power scaling topics or anything related to debating, join up Noblesse. It's pretty fun. And if you're just a community, if you're just an anime fan, right? Join Noblesse. It's open for everyone. It's a perfect community server. Now, Drip, to debunk this bum-ass argument, right? The problem with it being a GT exclusive statement is that Super Saiyan 4 is not even the ultimate form or state within GT, because Super Saiyan 4 full power or ultra full power Super Saiyan 4 are alternate versions of Super Saiyan 4 that are far greater than the regular base of Super Saiyan 4, right? These are completely different and greater transformations in Super Saiyan 4. And even if you want to account that as part of Super Saiyan 4 in the statement, literally the changed God, Buddha, ascended 100-year time skip Nirvana state is literally the greatest form in all of Dragon Ball, or just the greatest form in GT if you want to be that guy. But basically, right, the changed state is a literal different transformation, and it is far above Super Saiyan 4. So because it's not in the context of GT, it's going to defeat the proposition that it is. So logically, it's going to be in context to the forms dictionary in the Chosenshu.
Again, you're assuming this. There is no justification for that statement. The scan is literally talking about GT Goku. So everything in that scan has to be talking about GT specifically. Like, there's literally no reason to believe it's talking in a general sense.
Yo, bro, can I have what you're smoking? Because nowhere does it mention GT Goku, and just because they use GT Goku as a picture does not mean that they're talking about GT Goku, bro. They're mentioning Super Saiyan 4 as a transformation. The category is literally called the Forms Dictionary in the Chosenshu, bro. Drip, can you actually read the guidebooks, bro, instead of sticking to that one Daizenshu 4 statement about otherworld transcending dimensions and not turning the next page? Like, bro, you've been fanboying about it for years. I'm not saying it's wrong, but Drip, it's time to see. It's time to expand, my brother, bro. It's time to expand, my nigga.
Same timeline in the Chosenshu timeline, as well as some other timeline boards and consistent statements.
Nope, Battle of Gods is not canon to GT, not even close. I've already shattered every single argument for GT being canon to Battle of Gods or Super in my Ultimate Goku video, which I'm currently editing, but let me just give you a quick explanation to explain why it's not the case, right? So suppose you have, a line of numbers 1 to 10, and then the numbers 5 and 6 are written in Japanese. It doesn't matter whether or not they're in a different language, right? If you had to put 5 and 6, the Japanese version, somewhere, it would have to be in the chronological position where the English numbers would be placed, right? So just because Battle of Gods takes place in a time that is before the point of time in GT doesn't necessarily mean that GT follows after Battle of Gods within the same timeline, okay? So Battle of Gods chronologically has to be placed before Dragon Ball GT on the timeline board, but that doesn't mean that it is, happening directly before Dragon Ball GT, because alternate timelines are still canon to the world of Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball GT is a part of the world of Dragon Ball, so it makes sense as to why it would be included in that timeline board, also because of the fact that it's very popular.
Oh my god, not this bum-ass argument again. So first of all, I don't even think you finished the video, because if you did, you would know my rebuttal to it, because the scan about the timeline and its description is literally talking about the universe, a singular term, the universe. And if you think it's talking about the franchise of Dragon Ball as a whole, then you're basically conceding that Dragon Ball only has 2 timelines, which is absolutely stupid. And you mentioning that GT is really popular is also a bad argument, because the future Trunks timeline is more popular than GT. It's literally an aspect of Z, which is far more popular than GT. So I don't know why you're trying to mention that here, right? And Super Saiyan Bardock, which came out after GT, after Battle of Gods, or maybe not. I don't know, but that has been accounted for in the Chosenshu, but it's not in the main timeline. It's not part of that. So, and we know that it's an alternate timeline. So why is that also not accounted for? That argument is really bad. Again, you claiming that it's just a timeline talking about the world of Dragon Ball is extremely disingenuous, because then that argument basically means that you're asserting that the world of Dragon Ball is only confined of two timelines when you believe that there are infinite timelines, and etc. etc. Oh, and by the way, that literally contradicts the definition of something being chronological, because a chronological timeline literally means to be a sequential timeline, right? It's supposed to function like on a linear graph, right? Why would a chronological timeline show things that don't even happen and occur in other timelines? That just doesn't really make any sense visually, and is open to more complications and more assumptions. So why the fuck would we even be appealing to that whole idea of, oh, it's just an age timeline? That's not even how timelines work in history. Like, if I have a World War II timeline and I show the progression of events within World War II, if I have a chronological board of World War II events, like, bro, what are you going to tell me next? Oh, you're going to play skeptic and say there's a bunch of different events in World War II that happens to be in a different possible world? Bro, what are you talking about? That actually makes no freaking sense.
Also, that timeline board specifically says it's an age timeline. It's not talking about like a timeline in context to what contains like the 12 macrocosms in Senno's palace. They quite literally verbatim say it's an age timeline. So it's putting, the different events in Dragon Ball according to their ages. And GT's age is far beyond, the age of Battle of Gods. So which is why they included GT. It's not talking about it happening directly after Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. Like, literally, just because something is a future version of the Dragon Ball timeline doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in the same timeline.
They're literally claiming in the scan that it's one universe. No, but seriously, Drip, I love you, and please subscribe to Drip Sauce, because he's actually goated and he makes good videos. And I'm going to make my own Outerversal Goku scale that's going to be even more simpler than the original Otherworld Afterlife scaling, man. And yeah, that's all I got for this video. See? Love you, Drip. And by the way, we can debate, but the thing is, right, what you need to do is you need to go to the settings of the VC that we're in, and you need to change the name from debate to, like, you need to type it, you need to type in E, S, E, and X, right? And then you want to lock the VC and kick everyone out, and then the fun can happen from there. But anyway, yeah, see you, man.